I'm Max from Games for Families. Abstract games are in some ways the purest gaming experience, with a very small number of rules and untrammeled by any kind of theme. You can have a kind of vista of decision space which is kind of compelling and also overwhelming at times. So these can be both some of the most amazing but also frustrating gaming experiences. It's a kind of game that I have a complex relationship with, but I've given Ilios a go, and let's see what we think. Ilios is very mechanically simple. Each of you on your turn will place a tile which will come under your control, and so will the tiles that tile you've just placed is pointing at. So to give you one example, if I was to place this tile here and I was purple, then that would become purple and all of these surrounding it would also become purple. But in addition, this one is now surrounded and so is what's called plundered. That stays on there, and that goes into a pile of plunder, and that scores me the points on that card, which is a decent 10. And that's basically it. You play until the board is full. Once the board is full, you count up the number of plunder points you have, and the winner is the person with the highest number of plunder points. In the expansion, not much changes. And the expansion is in the box, that's why I'm mentioning it. You have the city of Troy in the centre, and you have these knight tiles that act not over one space but over two. So in this example that would take control of Troy. Here it would take control of that piece but not that one, for instance. The kind of narrative of the expansion is that if Troy is already, say, so Troy cannot be taken just by simply being surrounded. It needs to be surrounded, and then a horse, obviously a Trojan horse, needs to then attack Troy in order for Troy to be taken. And obviously that's worth quite a lot of points, but it doesn't end the game. You still have to fill the entire board. Ilios is very well produced, and it's pleasant to play. You can sit and chat as you play, and it sort of buzzes along at the back of your mind. And the reason why it buzzes along at the back, rather than being front and centre and kind of giving you lots of problems to solve, is that the decision space is surprisingly small. In physical terms, on the board, you're only, at any move, going to affect a very small part of the board. So you only have to worry about the things kind of immediately around where you're planning to place. And in terms of distance over time, you know, how many moves you have to think ahead, you can't, because you're drawing a tile every time. You don't know what you're going to get in three turns time, so there's no point thinking about it. I think added to that as well, there is a way that there is this whole surround mechanism, which basically means if you think of 8 squares surrounding any square, the key is not to lay the 7th, because then your opponent will be able to lay the 8th. So you get a lot of, in the early part of the game, simply just trying to avoid that. So it doesn't really have the kind of sweep and thinkiness of an abstract game, but it also lacks narrative. So this is forgivable in the base game, but when you have the kind of Troy expansion, where you have an obvious focal point for this game, that when somebody takes Troy, that's the end of the game. Isn't that obvious? But no, you have to complete the whole grid. So after you've taken Troy, the rest of the game feels like admin, and I don't want to play admin. So I can't give this more than about 4. It's a perfectly pleasant game, but it's nothing special. Next week is Essen, and there are thousands of games being produced. There is nothing that makes this stand out. And I'm sorry to say that, but I cannot recommend that you buy this game. If you are interested in an abstract game with a classical Greek theme, buy Santorini. And if you already own Santorini, go and play Santorini. It's great. So, I'm sorry that I can't recommend you Ilios, but at least you know now. I'm Max Davies. Thank you very much.